Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Please grab a seat now. We are about to start the next panel session. This next topic that we're going to be talking about is very, very interesting. As you all know, we're going to start the panel of Quantum in Finance, closer than you think. This session will give you a clearer picture of how much quantum computing can impact the financial industry. So, ladies and gentlemen, for this session, please welcome the moderator, Vitalii Bulynin, CEO and co-founder of Versus Trade. He will also introduce our panel to everybody. Ladies and gentlemen, for this session, please make sure you also have your headsets ready on. Make sure the light is blue. And also, once you finish the session, please put the headphones back at the points that we have here for you. So, ladies and gentlemen, can we have a big round of applause for Vitalii and our speakers here at the front?
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for this. And I would like to ask for another round of applause for the organizers who brought us all here, who make this thing happening, where we can meet old friends and make ourselves a new ones. So thank you very much, guys, for having us here. We really appreciate it. And the topic we're going to cover today is quantum in finance. You see, even though we're talking about quantum computing, I'm still having my paper with me. Relying more on this kind of things. And today we're going to see whether the quantum is really there and how they can help us, how they can be assembled in the industry we are all representing. And I'm very happy that we're having here with us our experts, Mr. Rahul Mahajan from the company Nagarro, and Henry Chan from Asia Quant Academy. So I'm looking forward for this session. Actually, like a few days ago, I've been sitting in the plane and I was thinking, we're going to talk about it. What are we going to cover? What questions are we going to cover? And I came to the idea that the best way is to see, as I've just mentioned, how we're building this thing in, how we can benefit all from getting these quantum computers. And I'm not going to steal any more time. Let's start with Mr. Rahul from Nagarro. It would be great if you can tell us more about yourself, about your company, what are you presenting, what are you guys doing, and then how we can see the quantum computing in this industry. What are the specific areas, let's say, which like you can help us with?
Sure. So myself, Rahul Mahajan. I'm CTO, global CTO for Nagarro. We are a listed company, public company from Frankfurt Stock Exchange. We are like 19,000 people globally spread out and fairly diversified.
That's a lot.
Thank you. So we are, financial services is a major part of what we do, like 35% of what we do, but fairly diversified into other industries. And largely our focus is on digital services, building solutions, platforms for the companies and products for the company. A little bit about me personally. My background is more from a research and architecture. I have 15 odd patents. Most of the patents are in spaces of machine learning, data science, data and so on. And we'll talk more about as we go along. The quantum journey is something very close to me. And in India, we are kind of partnered with one of the best institutes, like which is IIT. That's like an MIT of India. And we have a joint collaboration going on with them with a lab set up now in Nagarro. We call it Q Lab, which is dedicated to quantum work we do. We'll talk more about it, but I'll let Henry go ahead.
Yeah, we have our next speaker, Henry Chan here from Asian Quant Academy. It would be great if you can introduce yourself and say if you think how you're implementing the quantum in your field.
And everyone, so I'm Henry Chen. So I'm from Asia Quant Academy. So for this business that I'm doing, I am helping like hundreds of students to help them to pick up different kind of skills, especially in terms of the mathematics, programming, and also quantitative analysis, in order to be prepared for the coming era of the quantitative research field. But apart from my this side of business, I'm working as a quantitative analyst in a hedge fund, focusing on the fixed income and risks area specifically. And before that, I was working in like Credit Suisse, the collapsed firm before, like as a quantitative analyst focusing on cash equity trading. So in terms of the quantum computing, one very interesting thing is that like for different banks, especially like for the largest bank, JP Morgan, they have been defaulting different resources in exploring it. So it will be very interesting for us maybe during this discussion to know more about why like those different big player in this industry are start like working on that. But in my experience, like quantum computing, just like different type of new technologies like machine learning, is a very interesting area for us to see, especially like for the financial leaders in the industry on how to gain edge early on and to like be ahead of the game. So yeah, thank you.
That's great. That's great. And I'll try to start it one from here now. So, how we can, let's say, implement the ideas or the solutions maybe of what Nagarro is currently working on or thinking to start working on in a way of, let's say, the big thing for our industry is payments, it's settlements, how things are moving now, and maybe quantum computing can help us with this to make the gateway more fast and reliable, to make this card processing again more fast and reliable. What do you think?
Sure. So maybe a little bit before I answer your question, and just for everyone, a little bit step back and a little bit talk about how this whole space is gonna help first, and then I'll come back to your question if that's okay.
Yes, great, sure.
So I think the little bit of a interesting way to look at quantum, and maybe a question even to what's all quantum computing gonna help. So a little bit just to little bit share my perspective of this space. So quantum computing in general is a game changer in terms of the way it allows data to or the state to be persisted in the larger infrastructure, quantum infrastructure. So essentially, quantum is something where you can have multiple states, and when specific information is stored in multiple state, it kind of changes the whole game. This is how the nature is. If you may think why it's important to have multiple states, this is how the nature is. As I'm speaking, I don't have one state. I'm talking, I'm thinking, I'm little bit happy, little bit nervous. And if you have to convert my state into a classical computer, you will either give me a 0 or 1 based on some attributes, or maybe series of attributes. But then again, you are there's a lot of information loss that's happening in that kind of reduction itself. And this is what information loss happens in classical computing. What quantum allows you is by design, it allows you data to persist in higher dimensional spaces. And not just persist in higher dimensional states, but also do transformations, series of transformations through quantum gates in the same state, which is a game changer, because now your data is not in few dimensions, 0 and 1. You can actually do probabilities in each of these states, do transformations, series of transformations, and at the right stage, take a measurement if you have to. But data can still continue to persist in that higher dimensional state. Now, what we call this is higher dimensional computing. This is a kind of a specialized branch which quantum has a lot of potential of. And that's the one thing that at Nagarro in our quantum computing labs is what we are embracing. So this higher dimensional computing essentially is what I was referring as a game changer, because one, the state is something which can actually represent the true nature. So now coming to the financial services element of it, a specific derivative so trader, essentially the space is about brokerage, traders capability to help traders or advisors in the space to kind of do processing faster, predict the outcomes in a better way so that you can minimize the risk, you can maximize the value and so on. Now, typically and the first step is to kind of move the classical data into a quantum state. And that's where the whole encoding element or the first step starts. And then there are a series of transformations what you can do. The question was, with that as a little bit of a fundamental and as a base, what are the applications of this, and where can we actually leverage the whole quantum thing? Applications are so many. All the way from what I said in terms of faster processing, because now the data itself exists in multiple states. You can actually do a pure kind of pure parallel computing in this. Each different state can have its own tangent, and essentially the superpositional nature of the information allows you to do parallel branches of computation. That itself can allow you to do simulate trades in variety of variables, simulate risk in variety of ways. Now, the algorithms for simulation could be as simple as standard Monte Carlo simulations, and in quantum we call as quantum Monte Carlo simulations, which are enhanced version of standard Monte Carlo because of parallel nature of it. Or it can be more advanced algorithms like QEE, or Cubo, which is like quadratic unconstrained optimization, which is typically used in annealing. We'll talk more about it if required, but essentially the optimization class of algorithms, the search class of algorithms, these are where we see advantages. But I think what I like to kind of sum it up is, instead of just comparing it with a standard classical algorithm, there is a merit to start thinking that the entire state will continue to persist in a higher dimensional space, and that's where we'll see a lot of advantages in trading and so on.
Thank you for such a broad explanation. That's very interesting. And the Monte Carlo is not the casino, right?
Not the casino,
Oh, okay.
unfortunately.
Can we use these computers in casino?
Absolutely, to predict probabilities to win.
I'll text you later. But no, I know what is Monte Carlo. Don't. I've been there. So about the quantum computing, like it gives me the feeling, especially when you said about the high dimensions. And what about measurements? Are they around these quantum computers, or this is like a big mainframes when you need 25 people to run it off, or how versatile is it? Can I buy one to my office?
So like that's a really great question, because like without technology itself, like no matter what kind of theory, what kind of quantum algorithm we have, is like not something that is able to realize. So at the current state, different kind of companies are already like implementing their own version of quantum computing. So like you mentioned, the big mainframe company, IBM, is actually one of the major players that are in the quantum computing. So when we are talking, like let's step back when we're talking about quantum computing. There are two major branches of quantum computers, two major branches of implementations of quantum computer are there. One is the quantum annealing, which is implemented by the D-Wave, a Canada startup that have been working on this quantum annealing computers like for around 20 years. And for that type of quantum computer is kind of different from the computer, the classical computer we have. What that type of quantum annealing computer is designed for is to solve certain type of optimization problem. So for that type of computer, although like it has been proven capable of tackle different kind of computational difficult problem existing, but that might not be the ultimate angle that a lot of the data scientists or the commercial business leader would like to look for. Meanwhile, for companies, let's say for like Google, Microsoft, and also for IBM, they have trying to design something is called like universal quantum. That type of quantum computer are aimed at like designing something like gate-based design that are able to tackle more universal problem apart from the problem which is what we call quantum annealing that we're looking into. So like I would say like that's the current status of the hardware, but I forgot the initial question already.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Interesting. But what about, let's say, in finance? In our game, in the CFD industry, we all trade a very few instruments. Most of the people trade gold, they trade euro dollar, and things like that. And I was always thinking, what if we can bring something new? What if we can bring some maybe synthetic instruments to the game? How quantum can help us with these synthetic instruments? I don't know. Maybe Henry, you can cover this.
So like back in the days when I was working in the bank, I saw like a lot of the structurer when they're pricing complicated derivatives. A lot of time what they utilize is like as Rahul mentioned, like using Monte Carlo simulations. But what we know is that Monte Carlo simulation is a very difficult problem. What it means is that if we are implementing Monte Carlo incorrectly, it might take like so much time in order to give a correct price. Meanwhile, the opportunity might already gone. But with the quantum computer, it can exponentially increase our capability on pricing those complicated instruments, especially those complicated synthetic instruments like Vitalii mentioned. So I think it's really bringing an edge for us to have a better pricing, more efficient pricing, or potentially to create even more complicated product in the industry.
Interesting. You have something to add?
Yeah, just a small thing. The question, a little bit kind of extending what Henry said. On the hardware side, we do have options. There are IBM class of computers, which are more gate-based computers. Then there are D-Wave or annealing class of hardwares. Now, if I have to little bit 30 second or a minute spend on what's the difference for folks who are kind of new to the space, or even I was new to the space maybe in 2 years back. So annealing it's generally designed for an optimization class of a problem. Optimization could be like in portfolio thing, you are trying to maximize the value and minimize the risk. Now this could be if you plot the curve between standard deviation on the x-axis and let's say risk on the y-axis or the return, you would typically end up with a convex curve. On a good day, you may end up with a simple concave curve, but if you end up with a convex curve, which happens because you, in practical world, you have constraints. For example, constraint could be an asset cannot go plus 30% or plus 20%, or we cannot suddenly move money beyond certain overall budget. So there are a bunch of these kinds of constraints, and when we start factoring this in the larger optimization equation, the optimization easily very soon becomes an NP hard problem. It's a S-shaped complex convex curve. Now, what typically we do is in classical computers we run a global. We put a non-linear global solvers. Non-linear global solvers are nothing but if you have a loss curve with a value in a loss curve, and you have peaks and you have valleys. You essentially try to figure out, depending if you are minimizing the risk, you typically find to figure out the global valley, which has the least possible curve, least possible risk. And typically solvers do get stuck in local valleys. Now, and then if you have to really run a global solver, it's going to take a lot of computation because now you have to start at different points, bring stochasticity in your starting points and figure out you cover all the low value. What annealing allows you to do is kind of create a shortcut from one valley to another valley using tunneling as a principle. It can just go and do a much more faster scan of all the valleys. So annealing is typically good for optimization class of problems, but not every problem, at least in classical ways we look at it, is not an optimization problem, which can be debated easily because in theory everything is an optimization also. But annealing is a huge opportunity, and there is a lot of maturity already in that space. What Henry was talking about, he referred to D-Wave. They have specific hardware which is just designed around annealing, and there are kind of gate-based computers are also happening. That's already something which today, to the question, the hardware is available. We can actually deploy. We could actually do better. So there are, in terms of use cases, trade settlement you talked about. Trade settlement in HFTs is a huge opportunity. How fast can you settle the trade? In options and F&O space, people would know more than me. Faster the broker or the platform provider can settle the trade, better it is. Again, the superpositional nature of quantum allows you to conduct those settlement use cases in parallel. And that's where, and typically it's a 2 or 3 step algorithm. You encode in quantum, you run in parallel, and you settle. And that's where the opportunity is. That's one of the opportunities. Obviously, there are other opportunities in terms of predicting.
Yeah, you just mentioned about the opportunities, and previously you were talking about how we can optimize the trading flow. So I was thinking, if quantum computers really gives you such an enormous optimization and analysis and backtesting opportunities, so what we can do as an industry, right? We can run this models on the trading flow which we have, so the brokers can can provide a better pricing for their clients based on how the client trade. Let's say if a client trades more aggressively, they can try to build him a trading flow which will be more suitable for that like piece of the clients and things like that. And with this, I believe every broker can benefit. And from the payment perspective, as I got it, it also could be done in a way that when the request for the transfer came, the quantum computer can process it faster, can process it better, so it can address in a more better way, in a more tailored way. So the success rate of the deposits will basically will go high. Correct?
Absolutely. And the other example is in the space of risk, fraud prediction. That's also another kind of an important use case which we are getting involved with some of the financial institutes in Europe, where they are coming for us to predict, minimize their false positives, and obviously reduce also the false negatives. But little bit if I have to explain this. So in fraud, essentially the goal is to identify a trade which is actually not the right trade, and you have to identify it. False positive is nothing but you have identified a positive in a false way. And then something which has been blurred should not have been blurred, or something which should have been blocked shouldn't have been blocked. Something like that, right? So essentially, in these kinds of scenario also, there is enormous opportunity for us. What's kind of important for financial institutes, trading, brokers, the platform should at least start building the foundational layers. At least the data has to be started maintaining in a way that it can be used for learning purposes. So what at Nagarro we are also doing is clubbing knowledge graphs with this quantum infrastructure. What we do in knowledge graphs is essentially drum trading transactions, also have client profiles, some other first party and third party credit data and so on, and kind of build a risk profile around customer, around entities, client entities and so on, and then use that to kind of run simulations to find out fraudulent thing. And one of the important steps in this is running a Grover search kind of an extension. Grover search is one of the algorithms in quantum space where you typically try to rotate the qubit in a very orchestrated choreography way till the time it reaches to a targeted value. And essentially what has been found is both search and period finding have significant advantage on quantum infrastructure. And using Grover search, essentially the fraud prediction has been found to be fairly good. But what today can be done is, given the hardware still, in some cases still evolving, the infrastructure capabilities and the algorithmic capabilities have to be kind of worked on today. Because in my exposure, a lot of companies have started working on it, and it's going to be difficult to catch in coming days if you don't invest today.
So a lot of companies starting to working on it, meaning that it might be a next big industry. And given the fact that we have Mr. Henry from this Asia Quant Academy, maybe you can tell us what. Let's say there is a person sitting out here listening to us, or will be listening to this webinar or this speech later. What can an individual do now, or what an individual should study or put his attention onto now to get into this world?
So yeah, I think it's a great question because like without learning it, what's the use of quantum computing? Yeah. So like for me, like how
to get into quantum computers, right?
Maybe everyone will become an expert like after this talk. Yeah, we don't know. Yeah, but never mind. Yeah. So like for the quantum computing, how I would feel like the education perspective is to first divide the topic of quantum computing into like few area. Like we have been focusing a lot on like been talking about the applications, which we have seen like in the majority of application nowadays is focusing on first the cybersecurity. Second is on the computation, simulation, Monte Carlo that Rahul has covered a lot on this talk. So the second aspect of looking at quantum computing is looking at the R&D and the foundation work. So if we want to educate ourselves, of course, like aside from application, we need to know the groundwork. And for the foundation, there are three major aspects that I think is worth looking into. One is the algorithm itself. So for the existing quantum algorithms, a lot of it is focusing on the optimization problem, also like on doing like a simulation problem. At the same time, like there are still a new branch of field. It's called the quantum error correction. This is also something fundamental on whether like how close quantum computing is to us. And the second area is the theory itself, which is to put aside the algorithm, but also on the physics foundation and engineering foundation on how to deliver on that. But let's say if I'm someone like we're someone more practical, we just want to see what kind of value like quantum computing can deliver to the firm, and also at the same time, if like as a business leader, we want to know if we're lagging behind on our teams are investing in quantum computing. I think the area that one want to focus on R&D is on the hardware and technology development. So like nowadays, different kind of fields are available online, but at the same time, it's important, like crucial, to keep track of the major player out there, like to get the technology leadership inside the company in order to look at, what is the major development of the hardware nowadays, so that whenever the technology comes out, your team won't lag behind. Let's say if you are a broker firm, you are a firm that offering derivative product, you don't want to be left behind too far. Otherwise, you might not have a better like pricing, like a wider spread when compared to your competitor. So I would say you can like this is some key areas that one could look at in order to educate themselves on the quantum computing. But of course, I'm still educating myself on this area. Yeah.
It's good to educate yourself through your lifetime to keep on going all the time. I don't know. Do we have any questions from the audience? What do you think? We do.
Yes, hello, thank you. I have one question.
Okay.
Can you? Is it better?
Yeah, it's better.
Okay. So, thanks for your speech. But my question is, what is the practical approach of all of these things? Because Mr. Rahul speak about many theory of well-known theory about quantum computation, but is the current state of commercial available quantum computers reached the point where it can be actually practical applicable and used in a modern state of computations? If so, what is the required computational power in terms of qubits or gates? What is required to solve all of these problems what Mr. Rahul talked about before?
Thank you for the. Sorry. Thank you for the question. So, correct me if I'm wrong. The question is what is the current implication and what are the requirements computing-wise to implement all this huge power of the quantum computing? Jens?
I think there were two parts to this question. One was on the practical usage, right? And I'll maybe kind of wrap what Henry was saying. This space is not trivial, both from talent building and learning point of view. So organizations, in my opinion, should start. There is significant learning curve in this space. It's not trivial. Second, there are some leading banks which are already doing it. It's the biggest names that comes to your mind in the space. They're already doing it. So that's point number two. And to the practical applications, what you said, also in terms of the
I believe it's the hardware. Like,
also the
do we
hardware.
need to have ourselves like a huge servers and things like that? And how much it costs?
Yeah, so you don't need to have on-prem server running inside your facility. Both Gates class of hardware, which are now on cloud by IBM, by Amazon, by Google, you can, fortunately in last 1.5 to 2 years, you can actually do pay-as-you-go. And they are publicly available now. Slightly on an expensive side, but surely exponentially cheaper as compared to putting your own hardware. So today, if you have a small team, they can actually start working in a pay-as-you-go model with IBM, with Google, with Amazon infrastructure, if they know the space, and start kind of at least testing certain algorithms. Algorithms, now to your practical question, in the trade space are itself in the space of faster processing for HFTs, which is around the settlement side of the use case. Then there are on the side of portfolio optimization, which is around the initial planning stage of the journey. They're also on the prediction side of the algorithms, where you can you predict the outcomes faster than what classical can tell you, given the high dimensional friendliness of the infrastructure. And that's where the simulation, what Henry was saying, there is a simulation class of algorithm, there's an optimization class. The simulation class becomes kind of useful for us to simulate a specific outcome and see what's the probability of it to happen. So both, just to sum it up, both on the settlement processing side, on the planning side, and also on the prediction side. There are 3-4 different class of such practical use cases which I would absolutely encourage for companies to start exploring today.
Thank you. You want to
Yeah,
add
I think
something?
on top
Yes.
of that, I have something like interesting to add. Like Rahul mentioned a lot on the hardware and infrastructure side. At the same time, in terms of the software development of the quantum computing. So what we have seen like nowadays, we have the language called Q#, developed by Microsoft, is tailor-made for quantum computing. But in order for one to implement a solution that actually can be useful to like do quantum Monte Carlo simulation, it still require a lot of specialized knowledge. Like for one, need to be trained for quantum mechanics and a bit on the quantum computing in the uni or for their PhD study in order to implement it. So there's still like some gap between for a ordinary, like anyone, like in the computer science field, can actually utilize the tool in terms of the software perspective on implementing those algorithms.
Great. So, seems like quantum computers are really closer than we think. Thank you for the session. Thank you, Mr. Rahul, Mr. Henry. Thank you for having us today here and sharing your wisdom, your knowledge, and my good self. Thank you, everyone, guys, for coming, and try to Google more about it. I believe this is the future.
Thank you, Vitalii, for hosting the session. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.